time is it? 10? 10 game room tours, that is. We have done 10 episodes of game room tours. I appreciate everybody who's been checking it out, who has been supplying us with awesome game rooms and giving us tons of ideas for our own game collection. Thank you guys very much. And today's no different. On this 10th Game Room Tours Day, we have 3 game rooms that are completely different, of different sizes, with different stuff. It's totally different. Let's take a look. And before jumping into the other collections, I just want to let you guys know you can be the one that sends in pictures or videos of your game collection. Check the description below. There is a link to a video that explains exactly how you can go about sending in your pictures or videos of your collection. We take small collections, big collections, all of them. So feel free to send them in there. And to start off today, we have an amazing collection coming in from Shane. He has this first picture sent in of Mega Man, and this is pretty awesome. This is a picture drawn by his son to kind of guard the room here. It says, "Do not disturb, Mega Man in progress." And you got to respect that. That is one of the coolest things. Your kid makes something cool like that, you're gonna hang it on your wall. And if you don't, you deserve to rot it. Starting off with a really wide shot of this interesting corner of his space, you can get the vibe right away what Shane is going for here. It is really cool, a nice little corner to kind of draw you into everything that's going on here. He's got some shelves surrounding this kind of cornered area with some consoles on it. It has a really cool vibe to it. Just a thought on the general composition of this area. The floor has this really yellow, warm feel to it, and then he has this blue light that's in this room that we'll see later that's kind of perfectly balancing out that yellow of the floor and giving it this really modern feel overall, at least in my opinion. But on the left and the right of this kind of space, you can see that he has a PS1 display, which looks like an official store display for PS1 games, which you really can't beat as far as displaying your video games. These look like they have different tiers and can hold a certain amount of games. You can kind of stack them in there and just have an easy access way of grabbing your games anytime you want. That's what makes these an excellent display choice. Not only are they made to catch your eye because they're usually in stores, but at the same time, they're functional as a place to grab your games from. And then on the right side of the space, the one that I am more excited about because I'm definitely biased towards Game Boy items, is this beautiful Game Boy display. I want this in my home immediately. He's got an awesome array of these CIB Game Boy games, just lining it, and it is absolutely awesome. It looks fantastic. You've gotta love the tops of these displays with the old logos on there. All that nostalgia hits you in the face and you feel kind of like you're in a store. I think he's done a really good job of kind of balancing out this space between kind of a store kiosk-y feel and a very modern feel. And kind of moving from these two store displays on the left and the right, you kind of slowly clash into the middle here. You have Nintendo coming in on the right, you got PlayStation on the left, and they kind of conclude there in the center where he has some consoles displayed. He's really thought out this display here to give it a very much a store feel in the center. Having that Nintendo logo at the top, I guess that means Nintendo won this round, but also it has a nice display underneath of it, so he could probably display whatever he wants on that display. He's walking into this space, definitely getting that kind of retail feeling. And then down below that, he has some of his larger console boxes on display. And these are some of the harder things to display, especially in retro video game collections. And right before leaving this area, I did want to make a note about the backside of some of these displays, these store displays. They have a little space to kind of hide a few things back there. It looks like he has some controllers. He's got a PS5 controller back there and some retro controllers as well that he doesn't want to have on display. This is a good use of this. It looks like awesome from the front. He's got some of the things that he's hiding right there, ready to grab. This is a perfect way to kind of hide a few things, have some things easy to grab when you need them without having to force them into a display. But moving to the left of that corner, you get into some more games. He's got a lot of Genesis and Sega games over here, as well as his PlayStation games, some more boxes on the top. But if you look to the far left of this screen is one of these more interesting display items that I see quite often. I think it was for the NES or the Super Nintendo where they came out with these holders of everything, these trays that would have your console, your games, your controllers on them, everything all in one. and they are absolutely amazing, especially for modern day displaying of games and consoles. They work fantastic. Sometimes people don't quite know what to do with these and they end up kind of getting wrecked and the paint gets scratched up. It looks like his are in fantastic condition, and he's definitely putting them to use with having some books and other games down below, as well as an awesome, magnificent figure of Mega Man on top of one of them. He has that figure in a nice glass case that looks fantastic. Looks like this thing lights up really well and looks great at night. He also has quite the weird collection of something called the Casio Loopy. I haven't looked into what this is exactly, but I'm always interested by these kind of one-off game systems that came off and just nobody knows what they are. And clearly I don't know what this is. I'm sure some of you guys know. Moving left, you can also see that he's using the top of his window to display some of his console boxes for his handhelds. It's a pretty good way of using that space. That's essentially a built-in lead shelf that you can utilize for all sorts of different things. And then to the left of that, we get into some territory that I think is incredible. Right off the bat, I got to talk about the thing in the middle of your screen here, and essentially what he's done is taken a shoe rack and hung it upside down and utilized that to display his games. I mean, look how cool these Super Nintendo games look hanging off the ceiling. He's got that Nintendo sign down below. That's the blue in the room that we saw earlier. I really love the way that blue is playing with the yellow in the room, and those are, you know, opposite colors on the color wheel and really do well with each other. But hats off to him for figuring out this crazy outside the box idea for displaying some of his games in a space that he really wasn't using. He turned it into a masterpiece to show off some of his Super Nintendo games. And he's not, you know, just stopping there. He's got some posters on the walls behind it, just kind of outlining the area. He's not totally filling stuff in to make it feel just too messy, but I really like this area a lot. I like the blue light coming off the Nintendo sign. I like the outside the box ideas. I mean, a shoe rack upside down. And then finally we get to the other side of the room where you can see he's got a couple more shelves just packed full of games. He's got a few of those games on the upper right of the shelf up there, kind of put on an angle. I'm not so sure if that's because the boxes are too big or if it's just for display purposes, but it definitely comes off as a nice display idea. And that's almost wrapped up for this space, except for this little shelf at the very end where you have some books. And I really love game-related books very much. I mean, you've got magazines, you've got game guides, you've got books about developers. There's a lot of really cool books out there that have to do with video games, and why not have your own little shelf dedicated to those books? So finally getting to the end of this game collection, looking back on it, I kind of was hoping to find a place where it looked terrible, but the whole thing looks really fantastic. He's done a great job of manicuring this and taking care to really decide where he's going to put things for the long run, as opposed to just kind of throwing things all over the place and up on the walls and not really caring about it. That kind of planning ends up with an awesome game collection like this, so thanks for sending it in, Shane. I appreciate it. Next collection comes in from Christopher, and Christopher sent in a lot of smaller photos of different sections of his game room. I get a lot of these in. I definitely would rather have people send in bigger, wider shots of their game room so I can easily kind of know where stuff is and how it's laid out. But in this case, he showed off a lot of the display ideas that he's using, so I think it's worthwhile to take a look at. Starting at some of his PlayStation games, he's got them all kind of spined up there, all against the wall, but on top of them, he's put more PlayStation games on 45-degree angles. And that's a great idea, because if you would just put these PlayStation games down there in their jewel cases, you'd have all this negative space above there. Looks like it needs to be filled in. And it ends up just being a waste, especially if your shelf isn't as adjustable as others or doesn't come with any more leaves. Then you end up with just a big open shelf with a few jewel cases in it. So turning these on a 45-degree angle, you get to see the artwork, you fill in that space, just looks awesome. And moving over to his DS and 3DS collection, you can see he was going to go for about the same thing. He's lined these up down there, and I'm willing to bet he just doesn't have enough to kind of copy the PlayStation side to kind of do that 45-degree angle all the way up and down. But maybe in the future, when he gets more of these games, that's what it's going to end up looking like, and it's a cool idea. In his Super Nintendo collection, however, he has gone a completely different direction and gotten some custom game cases. These look like they are some high quality custom game cases with some really nice artwork in them. You don't see a lot of pixelation or any weird coloring going on. I don't know if he's printed these at home and used his own ink and made sure they were perfect, but a lot of times when you kind of outsource this kind of thing, you can end up with some bad artwork. Another portion of the room that he shows is this little ledge shelf. I always recommend these little ledge shelves, acrylic floating shelves. Is something to take up that space that you're not really necessarily using. I don't recommend people to fill their entire wall full of stuff, because you do need a little bit of negative space to kind of make it all work together. You know, you want some naked wall in there to go with your games and your posters and that kind of thing. Otherwise it kind of gets a little bit messy. But for this kind of thing, it's perfect. Put a ledge shelf there, you put all your favorite games up there. It looks like he's got Sonic Adventure and Zombies and Wonder Boy 3. I definitely dig this setup, and that is definitely a significantly large ledge shelf. And then here's the shot of potential for this game collection. He's got a lot of his handhelds out here just laying down on the shelf. There is a million ways that are super inexpensive that you can hold these up. There are a bunch of little stands that I've talked about, these little coin stands in some of my previous videos that are like 30 cents a pop when you're buying them in bulk. You know, you can get a bunch of them for like $10 or something like that. And then you can line your shelf with those and your handhelds. You could go the rose-colored gaming route and get rose-colored gaming stands and have each individual handheld on one of those acrylic stands held up there. And then just like the custom game cases before, he's got some Game Boy Advance games in custom cases here. But what makes these cool is that these Game Boy Advance cases are made out of old cassette cases, and that works really well because you could fit cassette cases into any of the displays that were for cassettes back in the day, and usually you could find those at Goodwill for super cheap and make one heck of a cool display out of them. And that leads me to this wider shot of the top of his white shelf that he has here, where he's got some of his Wii games and some of his handheld games all sitting in here. But if you look at the very back there, he has one of these rotating cassette case displays, and these are a dime a dozen. You can find these at Goodwills, you can find these at lots of thrift stores. People just throw them away because no one's using cassettes, and it works fantastic for displaying the spines of the artwork that you put into these cases. Also, shout out to this tiered look on this white shelf that he has here. He's got some games behind there in this kind of tiered fashion, using some of that head space in the shelf again to fill in that space instead of just leaving it open and making it feel like the stuff that you put in there doesn't fit there. And another point of interest in his game collection are these NES games that he has here in this kind of small photo. He's got DuckTales up on this display stand up here, which is on top of his NES games, which are inside of custom sleeves, it seems like. I don't know where you go and get these custom sleeves, but they look pretty awesome. If you look down at the edges of them, they have all the artwork there, the name of the game. It looks really good. And he sent a couple other pictures from around his collection at his console collection. It looks like he's got a ton of cool retro consoles. And there was this photo of this arcade, and I'm sure maybe they expected me to look at the arcade specifically, but I'm more looking at these magazine shelves that are sitting on the wall. I think those are awesome. I really love the ideas of displaying magazines, finding different ways to do that, whether it's in a picture frame or some sort of magazine rack from a company or something you find on Amazon. Finding these cool magazine racks really adds a lot to these old magazines, these Nintendo Powers, these Game Informers that we have. I really love showing off the artwork. I think that artwork is awesome. But yeah, definitely a cool arcade too. A little bit of artwork on the wall above it, and just a micro arcade there down to the left as well. Seems like a pretty cool place to be. I never really got a big shot of what this room looks like. I can't really tell what his overall feel is for this game space, but you gotta love all the display ideas, all these cool custom game cases that they seem to really like. Those are great resources for other people who are probably looking for the same thing. Now the next game room is also just a nostalgia space. You know, it's a nostalgia room of tons of toys and games and all sorts of crazy things. And this one comes in from Jared. I'm gonna leave up this first shot here just to explain what we're getting into here, which is just a wall of organized madness. He's taken this entire back wall and essentially covered it in nostalgia. I get a big feeling of like being in a Sizzlers or something, one of those restaurants that has stuff all over the walls to kind of get you thinking and get some older stuff and a lot of nostalgic things hanging around. I get that feeling from this entire game space that he has here. But what's kind of interesting about this kind of a wall is that it does feel organized to me. I get a kind of a organized madness feel about it. It's a little overwhelming at first, and it took me a lot of time to kind of understand this game collection, but I do really like this wall and how everything's kind of organized there. You can see he loves Star Wars and video games and just a lot of cool old memorabilia. Now, cutting to a wide shot of the entire space, you get the full length to take a look at, and you realize it's not just that wall. It is the entire room that is covered in tons of nostalgia. Not only that, but there's a ton of space in this room as well. One of the things that he's really gained by putting things on the walls is that he's gained all the floor space from it. There's no massive shelves kind of taking up the space and filling it in from the sides to give you very little space in the center. He's put them on the walls, and now he can have things like chairs in different places and places to be within his space. And I'm betting on the comments already of people complaining about this space being just too wild and too over encumbered with stuff, and I totally disagree. This is the way that he wanted to set up his game space. He has organized it. It's a perfect space to kind of move around. It makes a lot of sense to me that this is the way that he wants to display his game collection. And speaking of game collection, you move up to where some of his games are. He's got some N64 games and some of these nail polish holders, these acrylic cases. These are not too expensive to get, and they will pretty much organize most cartridges in a game collection. On the right side, one of the interesting things about his collection is he's actually chosen to use painter's tape to notify himself of what cartridge does what. Some people go out and get the custom stickers to put on the back sides of their cartridges. I kind of give or take like it or don't like it when those are out there. So the stickers that I got are hard to get off the backs of my N64 games, so if I want to update them with better art or what, they're these papery bad stickers. Where in this case, he's just taken some painter's tape, put it on the back. It's a completely good functional mod. But all in all, he's got some games out there. They're organized, they're stacked together. They're where he needs them to be, so it seems like a pretty good spot to me. And below that, he's got a shelf that's just lined to the brim with games. I don't know if this is a great display example. It's kind of, most of them are kind of packed in there, as many as he could possibly get into each cube on this shelf. But hey, they're there, they're easy to get to. And it's not always about display. Function always should come first. So if this is the easiest way for him to get to games, more power to him. And one other thing to mention about this space is there's like 4 different TVs at the very least. I think there's 4 TVs, there's computers, there's all sorts of screens in this room, and each one having games kind of nearby to grab and play. Some of their TVs are the bigger ones with a bunch of consoles underneath there that are ready to rock. There's TVs all over the place. I think you could just wheel yourself across the room and bump into a wall and accidentally start playing an awesome game. So this collection is just one of eclectic, controlled madness, and you could really spend a lot of time looking at every image of this and all the different items that he has, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. It seems that he collects more Star Wars than even video games in this case, because there's a lot of Star Wars all over the place. The cool thing about this collection is it's really not cloned off of anyone else's. They've definitely gone their own path, made this kind of eclectic, organized feel about it, and gone their own way. A lot of collections are just cloned off other collections, and they can end up looking very similar. If you look into the PC space, a lot of those rooms end up looking exactly like the other rooms that they're just emulating. And what's cool about the game collecting community is we all think really differently and end up with cool game collections that are totally different from each other. And you could find that on Gameroom tours while we're digging around through these collections. So that's all we had for today. Some awesome collections with really cool ideas in there. I'm always looking for more collections, so feel free to send those in. That's what keeps this fueled and moving, and we'll definitely have more Gameroom tours as we get more and more game collections and videos of game collections sent into Discard. Link in the description on how to do that. But thanks to everybody who's done it so far. I really appreciate it. But outside of that, I appreciate everybody coming and checking out the video today. If you like this video, please leave a like on the video. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Outside of that, just have a fantastic day today and collect what you love. You should do it. You should collect what you love. You should do that. Are you doing it? Are you collecting what you love right now?
Think something new under the sun. You can't take back them things you already done. No. You blame things that you do on somebody else.